I didn't break when she left. I broke when I saw who she chose. That's the part nobody really warns you about. Because rejection is one thing, a breakup is one thing, but watching her pick someone else, it feels like you were being judged without ever being told you were in a competition. And I know how that sounds, like I'm being super dramatic. But if you lived it, you know it's not drama. It's this quiet, really kind of personal pain. I remember the moment my brain figured it out. Not because she announced it, not because she sat me down and explained anything. It was so much smaller than that. It was a tiny moment I could not unsee. We were in the same space. Could have been a party, could have been a hangout, it could have been a hallway. It doesn't really matter. I just remember looking over and she was laughing, but not in that polite laugh, not the I'm being nice laugh, like real laughter. And she wasn't looking at me, she was looking at him. And I just remember my stomach dropping because my brain did the math instantly. I didn't hear words, I felt the conclusion. Oh, that that's it. Just oh. Like your body understands before your mind wants to. And after that, everything felt different, even the air around me. A clean rejection hurts. It's simple. A no has edges. It ends the story. But watching her choose someone else, it doesn't end anything. It opens a loop. Because now you don't just feel sad. You start asking yourself questions. And those questions, they don't feel emotional. They feel logical. They feel like you need to solve something. Like if you can't figure it out, like what even are you? Then at least the pain would make sense. But this is the first thing that happened to me. I started comparing. I didn't even choose to do it, it was automatic. I started noticing everything about him, how he stood, how he talked, how relaxed he looked, what he wore, how he joked, how he didn't even seem like he was trying. And then, without meaning to, I started looking at myself like I was a project that needed fixing. Like, what the hell is wrong with me? And I just thought that's such a gross feeling because it makes you feel so small. It makes you feel like you're not even a person anymore. You're just a list of traits. And her choice is a verdict, not a preference, not timing, not even alignment, a verdict. And it messes with you because you can't stop your brain from translating it like that. The rejection is painful, but being compared, even silently, feels like it's an attack on your identity. The speed is what really gets you because sometimes she moves on really fast, or at least it looks fast. You see the posts, you see the photos, you see the laugh, and you're just thinking, so I was just nothing. And I know that's not fair. I know people are allowed to move on, but your body doesn't experience it as she moved on. Your body experiences as you didn't matter. And then you start replaying every little moment you had with her. And you wonder which parts were even real. Because if she can look that happy so quickly, then what were you? A placeholder? A warm up? Someone to talk to until the real thing arrived? And that's so dangerous because you could just sit in this I'm replaceable mindset long enough and start living like you're actually replaceable. You just accept crumbs, you chase closure, you lower your standards, not just because you're weak, but because you're trying to prove that you matter. This took me a really long time to understand. I thought I was hurting because I lost her. But honestly, I was hurting because I lost a future I already started living in my head. Not in a weird fantasy way, just quiet assumptions. That we keep on talking, that the tension would keep building, that we had so much time together. You don't realize you're doing this while you do it. You don't sit down and plan. You just start carrying a future around like it's real. And then one day she chooses someone else. And that future collapses instantly, not slowly, instantly. That's what people don't understand. They'll say you'll find someone else, and yeah, maybe I will. But they're skipping the part where your chest is grieving a life that never got to happen. There's no funeral for that. There's no closure convention. You just quietly stop being in that timeline. And this is the weirdest part. Sometimes you don't even blame her. I didn't. Not really. I knew she didn't know me anything. I knew she was allowed to choose. But knowing that didn't protect me from the feeling because the pain isn't always about fault. Sometimes pain is just about loss. Sometimes pain is just your ego hearing one sentence. She picked him and translating it into you weren't enough Even if that isn't true, even if you know it's not true, your nervous system doesn't care. This is the part that really made it sting for me. You stayed. You didn't walk away the first time it got confusing. You didn't detach early. You kept showing up. You kept being consistent. You kept being the person you want someone to be for you. And in your mind, this meant something because it should mean something. So when she chooses someone else, it feels unfair in a quiet way. Not because she betrayed you, not because you paid her cost, because you spent time, energy, and hope. And then your mind starts doing this nasty math. If I did everything right, why wasn't I chosen? And that question makes a lot of good people really bitter because it tempts you to believe being kind is just pointless. But me, personally, I don't think kindness is pointless. I think the real lesson is that kindness doesn't replace alignment, and it's so painful to learn that. After this kind of breakup happens, your memories really start changing. Things that felt warm and nice start feeling embarrassing. You replay conversations and you start cringing at things you said. You wonder if you were too obvious, too available, too hopeful. You start rewriting the past to make yourself feel stupid. Because if you can convince yourself it was all fake, then at least you don't have to grieve something real. But that's not how it works. Just because it ended doesn't mean it wasn't real. Just because she chose someone else doesn't mean the connection you felt was imaginary. It just means it didn't become what you hoped. And that's a real loss. This is why it sticks because you didn't get the closure. You didn't get a clean ending. You didn't get the moment where you felt chosen or released. So your brain just keeps replaying it over and over and over again. Not because you're weak, because your brain wants an answer. It wants to solve that pain. It wants to find the exact mistake so you can prevent it from happening again. And maybe that's why it breaks you, because it turns love into a performance review. It turns that connection to a score, and you start measuring yourself with a ruler nobody gave you. This is the part I really didn't want to say out loud. A big piece of why it hurts is because I wanted to be chosen, not just by her, but in general. I wanted that moment where someone looks at you and says, "You, I want you." And when she chose someone else, it didn't just feel like I lost her. It felt like I lost proof that I am worth choosing. That's why it's so personal, because you're not just grieving her, you're grieving what her choice seemed to say about you. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I learned this instantly. I didn't. But eventually, I started seeing something different. Her choice did not define my worth. It defined her alignment. It defined what she wanted, how she would fit in her world. And that can still hurt. It doesn't mean you're unworthy though. Sometimes you're not rejected because you're lacking. Sometimes you're rejected because it's just not your place. And that's a hard truth because it doesn't give your ego a villain, it just gives you a reality. Time doesn't fix it by itself. I know a lot of people say that, but just sitting there thinking about her, that's you can spend a lot of time doing that, but it doesn't fix anything. Distance fixes it. Not stalking their life, not checking updates, not reopening the wound. And yeah, I know that sounds obvious, but it's really hard because a part of you just wants to keep on looking, not because you enjoy pain, but because you're still trying to understand why it happened. You're still hoping the story changes. You're still hoping there's a message that makes it make sense. What really helped me was rebuilding parts of myself that had nothing to do with her. Not as a revenge or not to prove anything, just because I needed to feel like a person again. Anything, gym, work, music, friends. I said this before, but just start filling your life with things you enjoy. Something that reminds you your life is bigger than one person's choices. If you're here listening to this late at night and you know this feeling, I just want you to say something simple. You're not crazy for being hurt like this. it makes sense. It's a special kind of pain because it feels like you were close enough to taste it and then you just watched it go by with somebody else. But don't let her choice become your identity. Don't let the way she decided to live decide your worth. You don't need to be chosen to be a viable person. And if this broke you, it doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you cared. And caring is still a good thing, even when it hurts. Don't let this harden you, let it sharpen you. And whatever you do, never forget who you are.